Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, and as I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. In the aftermath of the murder of Alex Pretti, and I'm saying precisely what I believe it was, a murder, all eyes are on Minneapolis, which is a good thing. But really, where should our eyes be? They should be on Donald Trump and Kristi Noem and the Trump administration. And I will not exclude Pam Bondi from this. She is the Attorney General of the United States. If you listened carefully this weekend to Greg Bavino, who is in charge of the Border Patrol agents, you heard him suggest all of the fault, every single bit of the fault, lies with those who are demonstrating, as they have a perfect right to do, against ICE and the Trump administration. Let's be clear. The death of Alex Pretti is shameful. And what really intrigues me is all you have to do is watch the videos. Now, I want to commend CNN because CNN has taken all of the videos, put them together in such a way that we can see that Alex Pretti, well, he didn't have to die. All he was doing was filming. Now, the argument is made that he had a gun. Well, it's true. He had a permit to carry the gun, nothing illegal about it, and he never put his hand on the gun according to the tapes. Pure and simple. He just didn't. And all of the words of Kristi Noem or Greg Bavino or others in the administration to the contrary, facts are facts. And now the administration is saying, well, there'll be an investigation. I have a simple question. Do you trust the Trump administration to conduct an investigation? And the answer, I believe, is clear. No, we don't. This is a moment of critical import to the American people. What is happening in Minneapolis is terrible. And I received an email from a very close friend of mine who has a relative in Minneapolis who described what is happening in such blood-curdling terms that one of my dear friends in New York, and she knows who she is, sent me back an email saying, "This is terrifying." It's true. It is terrifying. This is not the American way. Now, the president announced just a few minutes ago that he is going to send Tom Homan to Minneapolis to see what's going on and to be in charge. All I can tell you is I have no faith in Tom Homan. All you have to do is listen to his comments, which are basically an apology for the administration, to understand the dangerous situation we are in. Now, let me remind you of something I referred to last week, and that was the speech by Senator Abraham Ribicoff at the Democratic Convention in Chicago in 1968. At that convention, Senator Ribicoff spoke about Gestapo tactics in the streets of Chicago. And there was some criticism. But I must tell you, his words ring true today. This is certainly not a law and order presidency. There are Gestapo tactics being used on the streets of Minneapolis. And the simple fact is that this administration is pursuing a policy of fear. And this is just the beginning. You understand that they've already announced that ICE agents will be at the Super Bowl in just a little less than 2 weeks. And the implications of that are clear. It will escalate tensions around one of the major sporting events in the world. I point this out because this is not a crisis heading toward de-escalation. There is a question that is being posed about the role of Congress. It is Congress's job to appropriate money. And the question is, should they be appropriating money for ICE? So I want to make my position clear. ICE itself is not the problem. The problem is the way the Trump administration is using ICE, the way they are recruiting agents who do not have adequate training, and the general policy of the Trump administration, which has been articulated from the top to the bottom. If you are a federal agent working, you have immunity. Except that now the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, has sort of qualified that and said, well, you don't have complete immunity. But that is, my friends, the implication. I want you to know that what happened in Minnesota over the last several weeks is an indication of a broader problem. I listened to Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, who is indicating problems she is having with ICE agents. And across this country, we are seeing reaction to the misuse of federal ground troops. Please note, I'm saying ground troops. Now, let me point out that as tensions escalate, it gives the president even more of an excuse to perhaps implement something that absolutely terrifies me. And that is that he could implement the act which would permit him to do essentially whatever he wants. Passed 100 years ago and more, the Insurrection Act permits a president to take bold action to prevent insurrection. Now, let me ask you a question. What would you do if Donald Trump institutes the Insurrection Act? And do you believe that the Insurrection Act is applicable to the demonstrations taking place in Minnesota? Where is the violence in Minnesota? The violence in Minnesota is not coming from the people. It is coming from federal agents who are dispatched for that express purpose. This is a moment when America must face itself. The only equivalent that I can imagine was what happened at Kent State in 1970, when we witnessed the National Guard fire on students. And you all remember the dramatic picture from Kent State. All of us remember it, who were alive then. No one talked about abolishing the National Guard. What they talked about was making sure the National Guard was used properly. And I remember the eloquent statement by James Rhodes, the then governor of Ohio, affirming that position. What is happening now in Minnesota scares me. And the fact that the president is going to dispatch Tom Holman to find out what's really going on is, to me, a terrible error. So my question for you is a very simple one. First of all, as we mourn the passing of Alex Pretti, as we remember what happened to Ms. Good, as we see what is happening on a daily basis in Minnesota, do you understand, if tomorrow the ICE forces were withdrawn and the Border Patrol were withdrawn, well, there would have been no deaths. And I don't think there would have been any violence. So these critical moments need to be analyzed. And even as I am recording this particular podcast, the White House is making statements. Do those statements make you feel more secure? I don't think so. It's time for Congress to act. Congress needs to declare publicly that while it supports ICE, it does not support the tactics being used. The Congress needs to impeach Kristi Noem. Now, I know that the votes are not there. I understand that. But it's the symbolic action which may make a difference. Because Kristi Noem, at least from my point of view, has lost all credibility. And what is the president going to do about it? Let me point out that in a normal time, this president would have been impeached over many different issues. And if the Democrats control the House, I have no doubt there will be an impeachment resolution. But conviction in the Senate is a whole other matter. Do we have a lawless president? And the answer, in my judgment, is yes. And that, my friends, should scare us all. Now, this is not the only issue of importance that we need to face. The president has indicated that because of Canada's relationship with China and the establishing of this trade relationship, he wants to impose a 100%, let me say it again, a 100% tariff on Canada. All right, Supreme Court, here's where you have to act. The Supreme Court is currently considering a case on whether or not the president has the legal authority to implement tariffs unilaterally. My question is, when will the court act? Will it be this week? And if the president is told that he does not have the power to implement tariffs unilaterally, he has already said, okay, I'll just find another way. That, my friends, proves the president is lawless. This administration is not rooted in the Constitution, is not rooted in law. It is rooted in whatever Donald Trump says he wants done. And that, my friends, is not a democracy. That's a monarchy. And as far as I know, the United States of America is not a monarchy. It is a democracy. Now, the real heat now is not only on the Supreme Court on the tariff question, the real heat is on the Congress, the House and the Senate. How are they going to respond to these lawless actions by the Trump administration? Will the Congress weigh in as it should? And there are some who are deeply concerned that if the president imposes the Insurrection Act, which he could do, which he has threatened to do, the question is, how will that affect the elections of 2026? So, in response to many of you who have asked me the question, of course, the 2026 elections should proceed normally. There should be no interference by the president or the administration. The importance of these elections is critical. The last time there was talk about suspending elections was in 1942. We were in the middle of World War II's incredible impact on America. And some suggested that maybe because we were at war, we should suspend the elections. The Democratic leader in the House of Representatives, Sam Rayburn, and his Republican counterpart, Joe Martin, both issued statements saying, absolutely not. America is a democracy, and this republic will never forfeit its right to an election. It is through elections that our voices are heard. And it is clear that this administration needs to hear our voices. So this morning, I want to reflect with you on what is going on in Minnesota. I want to reflect with you on what has happened to Miss Good and what has now happened to Alex Pretti. I want you to think carefully about the implications for our country. I want you to consider carefully what it means when Mayor Bass in Los Angeles talks about the dangers that are lurking and the issues that she is facing. I want you to think about the fact that the Super Bowl will take place and ICE agents are going to be sent to Santa Clara and probably to areas around Northern California, including San Francisco and Oakland and Berkeley. It is to me a question of the future of our people as a free people. And may I say, when you have a lawless administration, which is what we have now, we must speak out clearly, definitively, without any hesitation or doubt. And that is why criticism of what is happening now is not unpatriotic. It is the ultimate in patriotism, in my judgment. We'll be talking a lot about this in the days ahead, and all day today, I will be following what the president has to say. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and click any of the links to the show notes to connect with me on social media. Remember that we are going to compile these questions, and I will try to answer them as they come in. That will be a new feature of this podcast. Please remember to share this episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand. That, of course, is our goal. And so many of you have commented on the show getting so much positive attention, and we are delighted with the advertising support that we are receiving. I want to say a special thank you this morning to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Gogo does an exemplary job every single day. Thanks, Gogo. And to all of you, we're going to watch the news today avidly and listen carefully to what emanates from Washington, and yes, from Minnesota. This is John Rothman. I'll be back tomorrow with more on Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.